Hey, welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about why Hinge Health is dead and they are moving into house calls, all that and more. We're speaking with Bryan Williams today. He's been on the show before. He's the owner of Concierge Physical Therapists. You can check them out, conciergephysicaltherapists.com. Don't get confused because I own conciergepainrelief.com, but both Concierge Physical Therapists, concierge practice owners. Bryan is down in the Dallas area. I'm up here in New York City. Bryan, what's going on?
Good morning, Dave. Good to see you.
Good morning. So we actually, you sent this to me back in, I don't know, January or February, this link of,
Sure.
and I'll pull it up in a second. So Hinge Health launches physical therapy house calls. You sent it to me. My immediate response was either some combination of surprise or some combination of laughter, because my original thought was if their technology was so good, and we'll get into a little bit of backstory. I know you have some more information on it, but if their technology was so good in delivering telehealth, virtual PT, whatever we're calling it, if their technology was so great, and I know it's a little bit more B2B, and you and I are a little bit more B2C with consumers, if their technology and their offering and their experience was so great, why the hell would Hinge Health move into house calls?
Yeah, huge shift. It's really a completely different business when you get down to it, for sure.
Another thing we're going to cover, Tony Meritato, he posted a couple things, commented recently. I disagree with him on a couple things. I love him, Tony, we love you, but I disagree. We're going to cover a little bit of virtual PT versus in-person physical therapy. And the in-person could be brick and mortar, but Bryan and I are mostly, concierge. So our therapists are going to patients. That's a little bit of his business as well. So Bryan, you sent this over to me. Why did you send this?
Yeah, well, like you, when I saw it, it raised some questions in my head immediately. First, I want to say, none of those questions stemmed from a sense of competition or like, oh, my business has this new problem. It was more of a wondering why would they do this? I mean, for the viewers out there that don't know much about Hinge, they've been around since 2015. So relatively new company, going on 8 years. They've raised, they're in Series E or just pulled off a Series E round of funding, upwards of, let's put it in the $1 billion range of funding total. Mid 2021, I've heard of valuations in the $3 billion range. They had planned on an IPO in 2022, which did not happen. And then early 2023, this year, they throw this information out there that they plan to offer now in-home physical therapy services, starting in their headquarters, their home base of Chicago, and then expanding into their other markets. So when I saw it, obviously with the space that you and I are in with our businesses, it just made me wonder. It made me wonder why they would be doing this. Ultimately, as you said, if there's something going on with their core business model that's not as successful as they had thought or planned, this would be an indication of that. And I think, too, when you look at the space in general for digital care, telehealth, whatever you want to call it, it's a crowded space. I mean, Hinge is one of the big ones. There's other ones out there like Sword, Upswing, Recovery One, Dario Health. The list really goes on and on. So it raised a lot of questions in my head when I saw it.
Yeah, for sure. So Hinge Health, a little bit here, accessible to 25 million members across 1,200 customers. Hinge Health is the #1 digital clinic for joint and muscle pain, delivering superior member outcomes and proven claims reductions. I could see a little bit of, we don't know, we don't have the data in front of us, and I don't know if the data is available. I could see how there would be some claim reductions potentially where you can kind of interface with a digital physical therapist, or who knows, we're going to get into that. Are they actually using physical therapists or not? We're going to get into that. But if they were delivering superior member or patient or client outcomes, they're not saying patient or client, or they're saying member. So again, a little bit of nuance here. But if they are delivering such great outcomes, it makes no sense why a digital platform, the #1 digital clinic, why, if you say you're a tech company, why are you moving into in-person house calls, which is it's not necessarily about competition. There's enough patients and clients and consumers to go around, but it makes no sense for the #1 digital clinic to move into in-person house calls. It's like, Amazon moved into doing home care, and I think they then got out of it, but they were doing home nurses or home health aides or something, but then they got out of it. We've seen this a little bit from folks like Amazon and others, where it started as a website, and then they now are popping up some, like Amazon Go stores, but there's like no people that work in the stores. You can just like scan your phone, your app, your Amazon app, in and out. You can just go buy milk and eggs and whatever and just walk out. So Amazon's testing that a little bit, but I don't understand, if you're the greatest number one digital clinic with a great offering, why move into in-person visits?
It gets back to that question, when I first saw this article. I mean, again, if you look at the timing of this, this was presented, press release early 2023. So we're going on 4 months ago. You look at that combined with the planned IPO sometime in 2022, which did not happen. You look at their, frankly, bloated self-valuation of $3 billion, going on $1 billion in total funding. The questions that come up, first are these investors not seeing enough revenue in the initial core business model? Is there not enough margin in that business model? And I think ultimately it gets back to a conversation that we've had, and Tony would love to be here to talk about this. But really, what is the place of technology and digital care, digital clinics in the healthcare model for physical therapy in general? And you and I are in agreement that I think ultimately people want face-to-face interaction with their healthcare provider. They don't want to have Zoom calls and FaceTime calls to pull this off. They want someone that really is invested in that relationship with them. And that's very difficult, if not impossible, to pull off in a digital and telehealth component.
Yeah. And I think you and I want an in-person experience with my healthcare provider. I think the only exception is when it's something very transactional. I think you mentioned either in pre-interview or here on the show, where we were talking about antibiotics or a Z-Pack or something that's very like transactional, where I don't care if it's a physician, a physician assistant, some nurse extender, whatever it might be. If I get that thing that I need, I'm looking for that little transactional thing, and I don't really care about the delivery. In terms of a 1 hour visit, whether digital or in person, if you're getting a 1 hour visit for back pain or sciatica or shoulder rotator cuff tear or just shoulder pain or knee pain or whatever, and you're seeking physical therapy, our core service, I believe, and I think you would agree, that there is a lot of the communication, the rapport building. It is a relationship. So the fact that Hinge Health and all these others kind of popped up after the whole explosion of like Uber and Lyft and all these other services, you can't necessarily make the Uber or Lyft for physical therapy. Now, I know that's what Hinge and Sword and all these others are, pitched their investors, but it's not the same thing when we just, someone just pulls up with a car. We don't even care really who it is. We go to the destination, they take us there, our accounts in the platform, it's done. And then it's over with. Versus if someone has back pain, they're going to need, 6, 8, 10, 15, who knows how many visits, right? So it's like, it's not completely comparable. And I think that is why Hinge, and like you said, it might be for a little bit of a revenue boost. They might say, and I'd be curious if they had to go out and get other physical therapists, or did they get some of their virtual physical therapists and say, hey, we need you to do some home visits, or we're going to do some testing and we're going to spin up some landing pages and ads or whatever, and, have house calls offered by their virtual physical therapist. So that's like a whole other situation. But yeah, it goes back to, if it were if it were so great, why move into the space away from a core tech offering? Uber and Lyft have different offerings, but the core offering is what it's always been. And so that really hasn't changed. And it's very transactional. You and I agree that it's more of a relationship scenario. And then some of the things that Tony Maritato was saying is that there is some place, and I know you kind of hinted at this, like, what's the place of technology? What's the place of AI or artificial intelligence or any other technology in healthcare? And not to steal your thunder, but I think you mentioned that technology is greatest served or used more on the practice management side, which I definitely agree with as well. But in terms of like delivering care or delivering the core service or helping someone with an outcome that they want to get back to CrossFit, they want to get back to playing with their kids pain free again, whatever. It just there's a disconnect for me in terms of like
Absolutely.
getting that in a virtual setting.
Yeah, the tech component, I think, is really successful in the healthcare world in helping with the ancillary administrative type things. I mean, whether it's scheduling, whether it's having those text components where you can use HIPAA compliant software to deliver messaging, EMRs, all those things that at the end of the day make it easier for healthcare providers to deliver the core service, which is the one-on-one in-person aspect of healthcare. But when you look back at some names of tech things that have come and gone, you look at Google Glass, you look at even the metaverse, and even AI has had a large pushback on it the last couple of weeks. I think ultimately people are wary of these things. I mean, I believe there is a component that is very successful in the healthcare world that uses technology almost exclusively. But for the clinical care, the actual nuts and bolts of who we are as healthcare providers, that's always going to be best delivered in person. And with that relationship that your business and my business has really been successful focusing on, is that relationship aspect of the care.
Yeah. So another thing that Tony Maritato mentioned recently is that he believes that there's some percentage of folks that don't want manual therapy. I think so. He said himself. Now, he's a physical therapist, he's a practice owner. He's very experienced. He can probably ease or reverse or treat his own orthopedic issues. I'm sure he does that all the time. Mm-hmm. Tony said something like, there's some percentage of folks that don't want manual therapy or they don't want handheld contact, whether it's, he didn't even say why, but I'm just assuming like maybe people that had some history of abuse or some issues or sensitivity issues, or I don't know, so some reason as to why they would not want hands-on care. I know a lot of people love hands-on care in terms of either the physical therapy or it could be manual massage therapy, whatever. Like a lot of people like that, and there's research where there's some beneficial aspects to it. So when Tony said that recently on Facebook, I said, well, it made me think, like, do I have a bias here where maybe I've just never interacted with people who don't want manual therapy? Maybe they've never come to the clinics that I used to work at. Maybe they those types of people will never reach out to practices like you or I. And then I'm thinking like, wait, I think Tony Maritato is wrong, but like, is he right here? Because maybe those people never reach out to practices like yours or mine. And maybe they are perfectly suited for the Hinge Healths and the Swords of the world. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that gets back to one of the foundational questions about physical therapy and physical therapists and how they practice is, really what is the profession and how does it operate within the healthcare spectrum? I mean, if you're looking at a patient that does not want to be touched, they just want to be exercised to death. The question is, why aren't you seeing a personal trainer? Because ultimately, when you have a physical therapist that practice in that same way, those physical therapists are essentially overeducated personal trainers, in my opinion. And that said, the whole telehealth component, like a Hinge Health, really that's the only way they can deliver quote unquote digital care, through an exercise-based protocol. They're not there in person to be doing manipulations, mobilization, stretching, cueing, all those types of things that involve the hands-on component. So I think it gets back to, like I said, that sort of foundational question about how the market sees our services. What does the consumer believe physical therapy is or is not? And beyond that, it's also how do physical therapists practice? We were talking in the pre-interview, we get a ton of job applicants and unsolicited emails asking to join our team. And if they have something in that cover letter about, hey, I want to join your team as a telehealth therapist and deliver the best telehealth care possible, I immediately trash that email. I am not looking for that type of therapist in our practice. I doubt you are in yours. It's just something that that's not how we operate. I do think that there's potentially a way for a exercise-based physical therapist to latch on to that thought process. But ultimately, I don't think the outcomes are going to be really that amazing. And it gets back to the question, why aren't these people just using a personal trainer to get those exercises?
Well, in terms of these types of consumers in general, or the consumers that go through like a Hinge Health, because with you and I, like we're attracting like consumers, so we're getting in front of people that are, for the most, at least for me, like you can fill in the gaps, but for me, it's like a lot of our new patients, it's either word of mouth or it's through Google or Google Maps and things like that. So we're attracting people that are consumers. We may not know them at all. They may not know us at all. They're reading our reviews. They're looking through our website, whatever. Then they're reaching out, versus the pathway of Hinge Health or Sword or all these others where it comes through the employer and it's like an employee wellness plan or employee benefit or whatever, right?
Yeah. So that's an interesting component that I wanted to bring up. So when I want to get back first to describe exactly how a Hinge Health operates. Okay. So they are not a B2C business. They don't have Google ads. They're not looking for inquiries from their website or phone calls. They have marketed their services to health insurance companies, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, United Health, the big ones, and large institutional businesses. You listed some of them: LL Bean, AutoZone, Salesforce. So, they've done very well in that aspect of their business and the development. What they're actually delivering, and I'm going to pull up something that I found this is from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas website. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas does partner with Hinge, and I'm going to read it word for word here. It says, what is Hinge Health? Hinge Health is an exercise therapy program designed to address chronic knee, back, hip pain. Okay. They go on to say the program includes personalized exercise therapy. It goes on to say that you will get one-on-one health coaching. Who is that health coach? Your health coach is an accountability partner, and they will work with you throughout the program through text, emails, and video, 15-minute video calls. Now, if you look at that, the wording, okay, which is very important there. First, exercise therapy is used multiple times. Never is physical therapy used. Physical therapist is not used. Health coach is your accountability partner. Who knows what a health coach is? I know there's certifications for health coaching, but nowhere in the verbiage of this description does any type of healthcare provider, licensed healthcare provider, does that come into play with what they're describing. So it makes you wonder, what percentage of these Hinge healthcare, virtual exercise, musculoskeletal exercise clinic, how much of that is really being driven through a physical therapist versus a personal trainer or a health coach? I don't have the answer for that. And my suspicion would be that, especially when they're partnering with a health insurance company, my suspicion would be, if they're not here already, I would suspect that the insurance company is going to drive that patient with knee pain, with low back pain, initially to something like Hinge. Like, oh, you have low back pain? We're not going to approve your 12 physical therapy sessions until you try this Hinge program. And, I think there's two ways to look at that. One, I think that could be a tremendous advantage for the patient. If it's as simple as, they have a stenotic low back case, hey, get on your flexion exercises and start to open up that stenotic segment. Sure, that's a fairly easy situation. But again, you don't know if that's being delivered through a personal trainer or a physical therapist in that case. The other situation that can happen there is just, the other side of the coin, which is, something being missed because it's not in person. You're not in the presence of a healthcare provider who knows how to differential diagnose, that can say, oh, you have a massive herniation, L4, L5. You need to have, you need to get imaging and go through the next steps with the proper healthcare providers. And if that's being delayed because health insurance companies want you to go through the Hinge avenue in an attempt to probably save money at the end of the day, I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah. Good point on bringing up it's almost savvy in a way where they've come across a way to deliver this type of thing, probably at very low cost, because they have these health coaches. So we don't know, are these actual personal trainers? Are they people that just have like a bachelor's degree in whatever?
Yeah.
Like who are these?
Or not even.
Now, you and I, we would agree that someone that's going through some type of ortho issue or neuromuscular or ortho neuromuscular issue, musculoskeletal issue, we know, and you would probably agree with me that those types of folks do need some amount of accountability. Now, when they're going to one of my physical therapist or your physical therapist, that's where the scheduling comes in, and they'll schedule the plan of care out maybe 2 times a week or 3 or once a week, whatever it is. But then that client, that patient, is now being held accountable to the schedule of this in-person physical therapy. They have to schedule time for one of our physical therapists to come to their home or whatever the third-party location might be. Sometimes we go into offices, sometimes we go into different wellness studios, whatever it might be. In your cases, you guys have the clubs, so whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But if it's the digital offering, that's why, I could see why they probably even need more accountability, because the person is not, they're not expecting, they know that they're not getting some in-person interaction. If you're coming to New York City in the near future, right? So it's like, that's on my schedule, and you and I hopefully can meet up. And because of that physical interaction, that is on my mind more versus like this Zoom call where it's like, we're going to jump on the Zoom call and do it. But it's virtual. It's like, it's not the full feel. It's not the full effect of meeting you in person.
It's not the experience. And, let's be honest, most people have 5, 6 Zoom calls, phone calls a day. So it gets lumped into the day-to-day versus I need to spend this time on myself, on my situation, with the guidance of someone that's invested in the relationship, invested in the outcome. And as you put it, it's much less transactional when you're delivering care in person. So Hinge claims to have amazing outcomes. I think in an interview I saw with their CEO, he was suggesting 60 to 70% clinical outcomes, whatever, you want to look at that. What does outcomes actually mean in that situation? 2 out of 3 surgeries prevented. And, look, there's a lot of ways to massage and move statistics around to benefit your position. But, I would ultimately suggest that delivering any healthcare service via a telehealth service or, digital clinic or whatever you want to call it, that the outcomes are not going to be as strong as they are for in-person care.
And think about these members or whoever, through the B2B businesses, the actual employees of the LLB and the AutoZone, whatever that Hinge Health is using. These members, they're going to report like, oh yeah, it was okay. Or, I did these exercises and the experience was good or whatever. They're only going to be getting reports of people that are actually, like you said, like the higher level cases that maybe just get better through some,
time,
guided exercise or some time. Right?
Yeah.
The people that really need care, that need hands-on manual therapy, or that they need, I don't know, modalities if you do modalities or whatever it might be, or traction or what, or, just like, or the members, the employees that want to go and do in-person physical therapy, those people never get through the whole plan of care of a Hinge Health experience. So then at the end, everyone that's grading the experience are those higher level people that either, like Tony Maritato said, the people that don't want in-person, they don't want manual therapy, they don't want to go anywhere, they don't want to have someone come to them. Maybe they're nervous about COVID or just different things that could spread or whatever. But the people that get to the end of that satisfaction survey with Hinge Health or Swords of the World or whatever, those are the people that are like the high level, like they're getting, moderately or they're getting better through mobility drills, exercises, things that they can just watch on a video, which arguably you could just, type into YouTube and do the same type of thing. Now, if those, like you said, just to recap, so if those people get better, great. There's less of a cost on the healthcare system. Those types of people never end up in the medication, injection, surgery, spiral. So that's great. But yeah, of course, those reports are going to be massaged because the people that get to the end of those net promoter score questionnaires or whatever, how was this experience? It's going to be the people that don't want or don't need in-person care. And the members, the employees that do want what you and I offer, they're not going through that whole experience. They're going to opt out. They're going to say, this sucks. This makes no sense. This is stupid. These exercises, I did some of these exercises and I still had my back pain. I did these exercises.
Or it made it worse. Yeah.
Or it made it worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a great point to that. Talked about the bias and perhaps us not understanding the market because of where our businesses are positioned. There's total bias in those report outcomes. I mean, if someone tweaks their back because they're 50 years old and they decided to go skiing for the first time, well, that give them 6 weeks and some pretty basic exercises, that it's going to more than likely get completely better. So of course they're gonna go through a program and say, oh, okay, this was great. I didn't have to go to a physical therapist, didn't have to go to a physician. I just did these exercises. It's great. But ultimately they probably didn't need to do that to begin with. So
yeah. What another thought would be the consumers who have some type of an elective surgery or even a traumatic surgery. So I'll mention the folks that have surgeries that reach out to us in the New York City area, like whether recently like some traumatic injuries with surgery, or it's an elective surgery. It could be knee replacement, shoulder surgery, ankle surgery, ligament repair, whatever it might be. It's for us, it seems like those types of patients are are hyper vigilant about making sure that they're getting what they want. Sometimes they're asking for they're asking for reviews, resumes, they're looking for CVs, they're asking for, can I speak with your physical therapist first to kind of make sure that they have experience in my type of surgery, whatever. So have you seen that? Because the reason why I'm asking is because those patients, I'm hoping, I assume like Hinge Health, there's no way that the consumer would trust that, right?
That doesn't happen. We have seen that. The Concierge Physical Therapist was started in Washington, D.C. And if there's ever been a city that's more hyper-focused on resumes and CVs, it's Washington, D.C. So initially, I used to get quite irritated about that, when someone wanted to schedule and I assumed the transaction had gone well. It's like, okay, you're on my schedule. I'll start to see you. And they'd follow up with, oh, do you have a CV or any letters of recommendations or a resume I could look at? And really? But, I think looking at the Hinge services, that's not going to happen. The consumer ultimately doesn't care. Getting back to your analogy with Uber, very transactional. I don't know about you, but when I needed Uber or a Lyft, I don't look up who I had previously because it was such a great car ride to the airport. I just hit the button and I don't worry about it. So different level of service for sure. And what I want to really get back to is the initial reason for this discussion. And, you mentioned starting off, is Hinge Health dead? Why this transition to home care? I think ultimately when you kind of wrap this all up and you look at it from a 30,000 foot perspective, the core model of a digital care clinic, a telehealth clinic, I think it has had a flash in the pan. I mean, tech had a super frothy stretch there coming out of COVID. Every investor was, hyper excited about this and that. But as we have come out of that crazy 2-year period of people wanting to stay home or needing to stay home or whatever, the world is returning to more of a flatline, stable position. And I think that the companies that have put themselves in this remote / digital / telehealth position almost exclusively, they're going to have trouble. And I think this is an indication of that. Again, we don't have financials. We don't know, what's going on, but I would suspect that after such a huge third, fourth, fifth round of funding, pushing $1 billion, that at some point, these investors were looking at the revenue numbers, the trajectories, and they're like, this, yes, this has been quote unquote successful in the short term, but if you're going to push this out into an actual viable business that's lasting 15, 20, 30 years, it's probably not there. Whether it's the revenues in general or the margins on those revenues, who knows? But I think ultimately there was probably some realization that there had to be some sort of pivot, and they've decided that the in-home physical therapy visits are the way to go.
And just to continue on that, so I think I'm saying that they were dead. I'm saying they're dead because
would not surprise
because they're not a tech company.
Right.
I don't think it's not a pure play technology company. Even before, like they're masquerading as a technology company. Same type of thing with Luna people, Luna Physical Therapy. There's no difference between concierge physical therapist, concierge pain relief, Luna PT, because you get your patients through Google. We all do. Like, okay, so I'm a tech company. And so now instead of, selling for X multiple, I want to sell it, 20 times revenue or something, because I use a website and I use Google ads, and, we get, now Luna build out like a little EMR, and therapists do notes or whatever through there. But like, okay, so Bryan and I, we can go acquire an EMR. We'll go acquire an EMR company, and we could just put a little white label on it and say, concierge physical therapist or whatever. And now we're a tech company, but we're delivering the same service, the in-person visits. Right. That's not a tech company.
Yeah, I agree. And I would caution, any practice owner out there, and I've seen this in talking with other practices in the past couple of years, that, the whole concept of tech and the world of tech, I think there's such a misconception about what that sector is and what it does. I mean, like you said, just because you have a website and you use some software doesn't make you a tech company. And to expand on that, to deliver a healthcare service exclusively through technology, I think is a complete mishmash of principles, of ideals, of really what the consumer needs. And I've seen other healthcare practices where, even the way they're structured, whether it's from a management position or how they approach their day-to-day, they clearly think they're a tech company. And, it kind of sounds sexy and it looks sexy because, as you said, they have their own EMR, their own scheduling, and blah, blah, blah. But, I think largely the consumers don't care about that stuff. They want to look at you in the eye, tell you what the problem is, how it's been affecting their life. And you look them back in the eye and you say, this is how I can help you, or how I can't help you, or this is our plan of what's going to happen next. And nearly impossible to pull off without that in-person relationship.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Just to recap, any final thoughts, any closing remarks here? I mean, I think we've pretty much hit on our beliefs. We've even admitted some potential biases, which I think is important. You and I are in a lot more in agreement than we are with Tony Maritato. So Tony Maritato has the 2 locations, brick and mortar offices in Ohio, but he does a whole bunch of other technology stuff, a lot of creative content. Right. And he mentioned a couple of those things, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. Any final remarks just in terms of your business, our style of business, consumers, healthcare in general?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to get back with Tony, and I mentioned this in the pre-review, I think he's done a great job with delivering digital content as an adjunct to his physical therapy businesses. Digital content, I think, is different than what Hinge Health is offering, different than what Sword is offering. Okay, they're not the same. So I do think there is an aspect for a physical therapy business owner to look at the potential for these types of services. The example being, you're seeing a post knee replacement patient, and yes, they're getting home exercise program, but hey, for $100, I can give you lifetime access to our whole suite of YouTube videos, and that's available to you. That's a different model, in my opinion, than what Hinge and what we've been talking about is offering. And ultimately, when you look at our businesses, I think we're very well positioned as any physical therapist or healthcare provider out there that is invested in the relationship with your clients, with your patients, is invested in that patient experience. Jerry Durham, love you. That's what it's about. Okay, you want your clients and your patients to feel like this has been, from that first touch point to them leaving your clinic for the last day, to be just an amazing experience. And that starts with phone calls, the emails, the accessibility to therapists and other staff members. If you focus on those aspects of your business model, you'll be successful.
Yeah, love it. As a final remark, I will mention, so I just heard, I don't know if you heard this episode, but Tony Maritato was on Jerry Durham's podcast recently. Did you hear that interview?
I did not listen to it, but I saw they were together. Yeah.
Here's something interesting. Tony is going to get a laugh out of this. In that conversation, so Tony has, and I don't get anything for it, but he's got a learnmedicarebilling.com, zero to paid course, $400 or $500, great investment, awesome course. Tony mentioned that he does like a rolling enrollment of this course. So he's got a bunch of modules already recorded in video that the course attendees can go and watch these modules anytime. But Tony admitted, now Tony, you're going to laugh at this, he admitted on the Jerry Durham interview that he does it every month or two with weekly or monthly Zoom calls with the attendees who are now newly purchasing the course. He said that the reason why he does that is because everyone has questions. Everyone has unique questions. Everyone wants that one-to-one or the, one to group, whatever. Everyone wants to ask Tony a specific question about their scenario, and they want that immediate feedback, that immediate response from Tony. That is no different than the in-person or the one-to-one synchronous communication of either a physical therapist delivering a plan of care, a visit, whatever. So that I'll just leave it with that. That is something that Tony mentioned, and I got a chuckle out of it because I'm like, yeah, Tony, that's exactly what we're saying. Like, people don't want
that's what we're talking
to go,
about.
They don't want to go log into some course, or they don't want to go log into some Hinge Health platform and just do these, stick figure, exercises or watch a video, which they could just do on YouTube. Right. So they want that. Everyone has their own unique questions. They're going to say, I have pain here. What about this? What about my mattress? What about my pillow? What do you guys recommend for mattress brands? What do you recommend for shoes? Do you recommend Asics or Hoka's or whatever? Like, everyone has unique questions, and they want a trusted person to give them, feedback and responses, and they want to have that communication.
Everyone, especially in the healthcare world, every patient thinks that their case is special, that their situation is unique. And if you're a provider and you can meet that, energy, if you can answer those questions, especially if you learn how to scale it, it's a home run. You're absolutely going to be successful if you learn how to cater to that mentality. Everyone who's coming through your office is special and unique, even though they might not be. From a clinical perspective, if you make them feel that way, you're built for success.
Yeah, perfect place to pause. Bryan, I appreciate your time. If anyone is looking to work with you, check out conciergephysicaltherapists.com, or they can reach out to you on LinkedIn or somewhere else on social media. Yeah, the website's definitely the best way to get to us. I don't do much LinkedIn, but you can also find me there. Excellent. If you're looking to work with us in New York City, in the New York City area, go ahead and reach out to us, conciergepainrelief.com. Subscribe to the Dave Kittle Show on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify if you find this insightful or valuable. This was like a little bit of a mix-up. This was like a little bit of Dave Kittle Show news kind of thing. So we'll see how the response is. We would have loved to have Tony Maritato here on the show. He was busy at this time. We'll get him back on and maybe with you sometime in the future. Bryan, appreciate your time. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE at CONCIERGE, painrelief.com, or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.